Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Powered by People podcast. I'm Rosie. I'm the brand experience manager here at the Red Cup. And today I'm joined by my guest, Tomasz Iwansky. Said that right, Thomas?
Yes.
And Thomas is a talent acquisition leader. You've had 15 years experience in the industry. You've worked with some huge global brands like Amazon and Bolt and Walt, which I find funny to say close together. And you're also a Six Sigma black belt. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Which I had to Google because I thought it was something to do with karate. But that's
No, it has zero to do with it. I don't know. Unfortunately, not. You call corporate stuff, unfortunately.
that shows my naivety. But yeah, very impressive. So well done. Anything I've missed off your introduction? Anything you think the listeners should know about you?
I think you said it all. Maybe, most recently I was global head of volume talent acquisition at Volt, where I led global high volume hiring and delivered this so-called high volume hiring transformation. So we basically shifted completely from fully human driven recruitment process to, let's say, AI supported recruitment. So that's it.
Wow, and very topical right now. We're going to talk about AI a bit later on in the episode. But before we get started, I wanted to ask you 5 of our warm-up questions. And the first one is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
For some reason, I don't know, that doesn't even sound super interesting right now, but I wanted to be an architect. I think my mom wanted to be an
That's
architect.
very interesting.
Yeah, but never landed, even anywhere close to that. So yeah, architect it was.
That's a great answer. I don't think we've had that answer before, so that's a really good one. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Depends on the season. In winter, I definitely sleep longer than I could, let's say. But in summer, it's quite easy for me to wake up early. So probably 5:30 a.m. is my wake up time. So early bird in summer.
Yeah, and then in the winter, what time would you wake up?
It depends, but definitely after 7:30, which for me is a little bit too late. I don't like waking.
I mean, I'm exactly the same. Most time I'm up at like 5:36, not 5:36, 5:36. And then, yeah, I don't think I've ever slept past, I don't know, 7:45 for I don't even know how long. What was the first job that you ever had?
The very first job I ever had was, I think it's picker and packer in a big grocery store chain in Poland. I was only 15 back then because it's a minimum age requirement in Poland to
15.
Yeah, 15. It was a weekend job, but then first, let's say, serious job was in recruitment as a recruitment consultant.
Fine. So you've been recruitment your whole life, basically.
Yeah, you can say that. Yes.
Amazing. And what's one app that you couldn't live without on your phone?
I think it's Bolt. My previous companies I worked with. So Bolt, because I use ride hailing quite a lot. I don't like driving at all. I have a car, but I drive only if it's absolutely necessary.
Wow.
Otherwise, I try to avoid driving. And Volt for food delivery and grocery delivery. I got a little bit lazy since COVID. I don't.
We're representing your past roles. I love it.
I'm just a loyal customer.
And the last question is, what would be your dream holiday destination? You might have been there already.
Somewhere very far away. I don't know where. I never been to LA, to be honest, for some reason. So probably right now, if I have to choose one and go tomorrow, it will be LA.
Perfect. I love that answer. I don't think I've had that one either. Normally people pick some kind of tropical island or something. So I love that. Excellent. So today we're talking all about the operational truth behind high volume hiring. And part 1, we're going to be discussing sort of the craft of high volume hiring. And the first thing I wanted to speak to you about was, when I hear high volume hiring or in the industry, people often assume that it just means hiring with more CVs or just hiring more, which is obviously not the case. So what do you think's dangerous about that mindset of just thinking it means more CVs? And what's the difference in the discipline of high volume hiring?
Mhm. That's a very good question. And I think the main reason why it is dangerous is exactly as you said. Some people assume that the only thing that changes is volume, and that's it. But in my opinion, volume actually changes the entire nature of the problem. Because if you think about it, let's say I'm hiring 5 software engineers. So in that case, I can probably compensate for a bad process with effort, right? Recruiters can chase people, hiring managers can make exceptions. What I mean is you can fix things manually if it's needed. But the situation is completely different if I'm hiring 500 customer support agents or 500 warehouse associates, because then that doesn't work anymore, right? Suddenly I'm dealing with things like scheduling, like automation, like forecasting, like candidate drop off, bottlenecks. And at that level, recruitment starts looking more like a operational function rather than typical HR function. And this is what I always say, that high volume hiring is not necessarily recruitment at scale. It's more like an operational capability.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so overwhelming to someone like me who's not, I'm not recruiter background. So to have to hire 500 people in those roles, I wouldn't even know where to start. So on that note, what skills and operational thinking does someone need to be able to do high volume hiring? And why does the process design matter, like more than people realize? You said obviously it's not just about being the function; it changes the whole process. What do you think
Yeah.
people need to know about that?
I think the process design matters because when you're hiring at scale, tiny inefficiencies can become very, very expensive. So let's say if you lose 10 candidates because your application process is too complicated, well, it's a pity. It's 10 candidates, but you can probably live with that. It's not the end of the world. But if you lose 10,000 candidates for the same reason, then it is different, right? Then that's a business problem.
Mm.
And I've seen companies spend millions attracting candidates and then lose them because the application takes 20 minutes to fill or nobody gets back to them for 2 weeks. Uh, and in high volume, every unnecessary click, every unnecessary approval, unnecessary step, basically every delay has a measurable cost. That's why process design is so important. And you also asked about what makes someone good at high volume, or what kind of skills are necessary to be considered good at volume. I think that some of the best people in high volume, they don't even think like recruiters at all.
Right.
you know uh, the mindset is different, the challenge is different. And I think some of the best people in volume, they think more like operators, or even, let's say, high velocity sales people, so
Yeah.
just this approach that just pick up the phone and dial, just call. It's a pure action, and there's no time to think really, because you have to move fast. And it is because in high volume, and in recruitment, speed is important, but in high volume, speed is absolutely everything. It's everything, because you're not just competing on who finds candidates first. You're competing on who reaches them first, who responds first, who moves first. Because if you don't call them today, right now, there's a real chance that 3 other companies already will. That's
Mm.
how fast it moves in high volume. And this is why I think that a lot of recruiters focus on finding talent, when in high volume the challenge is slightly different. I think the challenge in volume is closer to, and I would say it again, sales operations. So you have to think how to design a process, a system that can process people, that can attract talent and convert people fast, at speed, faster than someone else does. And this is also why it may sound a bit controversial. Probably being a great recruiter doesn't automatically translate into being great at high volume, because it's a different game. I would even argue it may be considered different job. And the reality is that a lot of recruiters actually hate high volume because it is much less about, deep individual relationship-based hiring and more about volume, pace, and execution. So that I would consider those the main skills that are needed in order to be considered good in this.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I suppose, from my understanding at least, traditionally the roles that you would hire for in a high volume environment tend to be ones that I suppose are more interchangeable and like fast turnover, if it's sales, or like you say, if it's someone for the warehouse or whatever. So that completely makes sense that it's you said it the right word, a little bit controversial, but it's kind of less about the person and just more about the process and like filling those roles. And then if they're not the right person, then there's thousands of other people that can fill that space, right? If I've understood that correctly. So in that case, I suppose the candidate experience is completely different to hiring for different roles, right? How do you think the candidate experience changes when you're hiring at scale?
It does change. Definitely, it has to change when we are talking about hiring at scale. But the thing is that in high volume hiring, and this is something that is very often overlooked, by the way, in high volume hiring, your candidates are very often your customers, especially in B2C businesses.
Right.
So this is why every interaction with a candidate is or can be customer interaction. So the way you communicate, the speed of your process, the respect you show them throughout the journey, it all can have a real measurable impact on, how people perceive your brand. And if you give candidates a poor experience, they can stop buying your products, or they can stop using your app.
Yeah,
Or
that's so
even
true.
worse, like they can go online and recommend against your company, which is it can be a total disaster in some cases. So that's why in high volume hiring, or high volume hiring in general, shouldn't treat candidates just like applications to process. Maybe put it this way. I think it should treat candidates like it treats customers. So clear, honest communication, responsiveness, positive experience. And this is why in high volume, I think that candidate satisfaction shouldn't be considered only a recruiting metric. It should be considered a customer satisfaction metric, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that absolutely. And I'm going to throw you a question that wasn't on our questions list, if you don't mind. But we see things all the time on LinkedIn and across the industry about, giving candidates feedback if they're not right for the role. So what's your view on that in a high volume sense? Because, if you're hiring for 500 roles, and so God knows how many thousands of applications you're getting for that, how do you go back to everyone? Do you go back to everybody? Like what does that look like? Sorry, I've thrown a curveball there, but I'd
Yeah,
like to get your opinion on that.
yeah, that's a very good question, and I believe that no matter on what kind of role it is, everybody deserves a feedback. Everybody wants it, and everybody deserves it. But the truth is that in high volume, if you have to deal with, again, 10,000 plus applications and you reject 9,000 out of that, it is simply impossible to get back to everybody with individual feedback and have this quick 15-minute thing and explain to people individually why you are not the right fit or why we decided to hire somebody else. And in that case, I think this is the area where AI can be, and typically already is, very helpful. You can automate these kind of things. You can automate these kind of responses, these kind of reach outs, and feedback also can be AI driven and personalized. So something that was not possible probably 5 to 10 years ago, now it is possible. And if you have the right tools, if you have the right technology providers, you can provide feedback to absolutely everybody, no matter how big the number is.
Recruitment? Yeah, it needs a refresh. 47 billion euros wasted globally every year. Outdated processes, poor hires, time loss. That's not a crack, that's a sinkhole.
But that's where we come in.
We're not here to paper over the cracks.
We're here to tear the whole thing down and rebuild it. We don't have a talent bench. We have an agile community ready to flex and flow with your needs.
Forget traditional RPOs. Forget that one-size-fits-all nonsense.
Recruitment doesn't work that way anymore. With responsive, reliable recruitment support when you need it. We're 100% reliable. No fixed bench, no cookie cutter solutions.
What we do have is an obsession with delivering agile, authentic, noble talent solutions. And the best part, you don't have to settle for good enough anymore.
It's about talent, real talent, embedded into your team like it was always meant to be there.
We don't just send over CVs and cross our fingers.
Just a collective of top-tier recruiters.
Ready to deploy in days, not weeks.
Basically, we're not your average recruiters.
Actually, we're the exact opposite of that.
We're the Rec Hub.
We're in your corner, repping your brand, your culture, your values.
It's time to evolve. It's time to think differently. It's time to just ask the Rec Hub. You answered what my next question was going to be, because part 2 is all about AI in high volume hiring. And then I was going to ask you if you've seen that process change now because of AI. To your point, you can kind of maybe have an automation that it's used your AI note taker and it's collected the information. And then if you hit the reject button or however it's set up, it can give that feedback to the candidate. So I suppose the question I wanted to see is, in terms of AI, what difference are you seeing it make in high volume hiring, and what are the positives of that? And then what do you see as shortfalls or things that we still need to work on to get AI, where it needs to be in high volume hiring?
Mm-hmm. I think that one very positive thing is basically that AI conversation is finally becoming more realistic, and that's very helpful. I remember, and we probably all remember, a couple of years ago, people were talking as if AI was going to replace recruiters entirely.
Yeah.
And
We're
I
actually
think,
robots on this call. We're not real people.
yeah, and I don't think it's happening. I don't think the world is moving toward that direction. I think that AI turned out to be very helpful and useful in areas that are repetitive and probably process heavy. So in high volume, we are talking about things like interview scheduling or generating summaries, screening CVs as well. We're talking about forecasting demands or answering candidate common questions. So those are all areas where AI can create big efficiency gains. But I think it's a big mistake to think that AI can make nuanced hiring decisions completely on its own. There are still some things where AI isn't good at all and humans are still better at. So for example, AI is very good at recognizing patterns, but it isn't good at, let's say, spotting potential. So for example, it's not only in high volume, but in recruitment in general, sometimes the best candidate isn't the one who perfectly matches the job description. Sometimes it is someone who has unusual background, exceptional motivation, or transferable skills. And thank God humans are still better than AI at spotting those signals. Another thing which is not good about AI and probably will be difficult to solve is basically the fact that AI learns on historical data. So if your process has some problems, AI will probably end up, scaling those problems rather than solving them.
Yeah, exactly. Because I suppose it's only going off what's put in the first place, right? So if you start off with bad data, then you're just going to continue that. I mean, we've had so many conversations with other leaders in the industry about how AI is working and how it's integrated into the industry. And I feel like the general consensus is that, whatever process you have that's got AI involved, it should start with a human and end with a human. And I think to your point, we're seeing a rise in conversations about the skills of someone and the personality of someone, and that just because they didn't, go to uni or, do this course, they, like to your point, they've got the motivation and the passion, and a AI bot's never going to pick that up, right? So as long as it's, starts with a human and ends with a human, then hopefully we're on the right path to integrating it better. So my next question is, as hiring shifts from human driven to AI supported, what we kind of just discussed it, but what does the transition look like in practice in terms of integrating the two, together?
I think, like I said, I don't think we're moving toward the world where AI replaces recruiters completely. I think we're moving toward the world where recruiters stop spending the majority of the day on administrative, repetitive tasks. So the recruiter of the future probably spends less time on, updating spreadsheets and scheduling interviews, and more time on things that really matter in the process. So, managing stakeholders, improving processes, or simply making decisions. So that would mean that at least, as of today, AI doesn't take away, or maybe AI does take away some tasks, but it doesn't take away accountability.
Yeah, I'm going to snap that as a quote because that is a great one. And I suppose, you'll probably see in your line of work more than I just how companies still get high volume hiring wrong. So what are the most common operational fails that you see? Or do you see a company do something you think, oh my God, don't do it. You shouldn't do it like that. You should do it like this. What does that look like? And what do people need to do to get it right?
Yes. What companies do wrong in high volume? I think the most common mistake I see, but it's not only in high volume, it also, all other kinds of recruitment. But I very often see companies automating chaos. So they take this broken process and add technology to it and expect some miracles to happen, but then they come back to it and then they are surprised that, hey, the process is still broken. So that's number one. So trying to, automate things that simply doesn't work in the first place. Number two, I see a lot of fraction, literally everywhere. So you have different teams responsible for different, parts of the candidate journey. So you have probably marketing or employer branding team responsible for talent attraction. You have recruitment responsible for screening. Then you have HR being responsible for onboarding. The operations owns the systems. But in the end, you don't have anybody who owns the, entire candidate journey. And if you don't have anybody who owns the whole funnel, then candidates are, ending up paying the price. Probably one last thing, which is also quite common when it comes to, what companies do wrong in high volume specifically, would be measuring wrong things. So sometimes I see companies celebrating things like, application volume, when you should be focusing on metrics like probably speed, quality, or conversion rates. So I would say those three are the most common mistakes I see quite often.
Yeah, we just done a piece of content recently, actually, with Kevin Blair in the industry. He helped us with a white paper all about metrics, basically, and how we constantly see people reporting on cost per hire or the amount of hires, but all that does is highlight the process, and it doesn't tell you anything about how those hires help grow that business. So I'll definitely link that below for anybody that's interested in that. But yeah, I think what you've said about making sure that the team is aligned is obviously very important, and that goes across, all departments in the business, right? If you've got one person doing this and one person doing that, but there's no connection, then things are never going to go right. And I'm going to hit you with another curve question that just came to me whilst you were talking, which was, what do you think that other recruitment areas can learn from high volume hiring? If there's, something that department does differently, or what do you think they can learn? And I suppose vice versa. What do you think people that do high volume hiring should learn from other recruitment functions?
Mm-hmm. I think definitely one thing that non-volume recruiters can learn from high volume recruiters is the process should be short. And I'm not very much familiar with low volume recruitment because, like I said, all my professional career, from the very beginning, I spent in high volume space. In high volume, the process must be short because, like I said, time is absolutely everything. If your process is too long, your candidate applied for another 5 to 10 jobs simultaneously. So whoever reaches them first and say, hey, you can start tomorrow, they probably go there tomorrow and they will never, ever let you know that they are no longer available. They simply ghost. And, from my experience as a candidate, when I apply for, our white collar roles, the process is sometimes very long. It can be 5+ stages, and you have very similar conversations with similar people, and they all ask you the same kind of questions. So I would say that processes with more than 5 steps shouldn't be acceptable, no matter what the seniority of the role is. So this is kind of mindset that probably low volume recruiters can take from high volume space. Just keep it fast, keep it short, because people have a variety of different options nowadays. And what high volume recruiters can probably learn from low volume ones is, I wish, this is something very difficult. I don't see it too often. Companies still don't know, or high volume teams still don't know how to do it. But in low volume, there's a big emphasis put on, quality of hire. So quality of hire is a very solid metric, and you have many different ways to actually measure quality. And then, for some recruitment teams, it's one of the main KPIs to follow. And in high volume, the problem is that most of the teams which I worked with, or most of the companies which I worked with, they don't even understand, and they don't have this internal alignment on what quality is in high volume. So, okay, if they come to work, if they show up on day one, can that be considered good quality?
Yeah.
Yeah, or if they stay longer than 3 weeks, can that be considered good quality? Because in high volume, as you probably know, there's huge attrition. People come and go all the time. So in some cases, if some other recruitment agency or blue collar company will call them and offer them, better salary, they simply go there the very next day. They can even walk off site, simply never come back and go to the new job. And this is why some companies think that attrition should be the main driver of, in this conversation about quality in high volume world. But I think quality of hiring high volume should be probably combination of attrition, probably performance should be there as well. If, ideally if it's measured in a specific role. And I think also there should be a piece of maybe hiring manager feedback. So, those blue collar people or entry level workers, they report to someone. So maybe feedback from the manager should be also considered quality. So then we have this combination of 3 things. So it's attrition, performance at work in the first couple of weeks, and hiring manager feedback. But this is something, again, that's, I don't see it too often being really, verbalized what quality of hire is in high volume.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I don't either. Maybe we should do a little bit of work on that and look at what that actually looks like. Thomas, thank you so much. Everything you've covered in the podcast has been, amazing, really to the point, and I think you give it all the listeners, something to think about. My closing question is not high volume related, and it is that what's one bit of professional advice you wish that you could give your younger self?
That's a very good question, and I probably have to take some time to think. What advice would I give to my younger self? Probably don't focus only on recruitment or on one profession. You know what I mean? So probably I started recruitment when I was 18, and 15 or almost 16 years later, I'm still in the same area. But very recently, I also started doing some other things. not necessarily in the space of recruitment. And that made me realize that there is actually some words outside of this one little thing I was always focused on. And I don't say it is bad or it is too late for anything, but probably my advice would be, okay, you do this thing, you like it, you're good at it, but keep on trying new things, because there may be something which you like even more, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great bit of advice and a great way to sign off the podcast. So thank you so much for joining. And we hope everybody enjoys the episode, and make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.